to the Funnel Reboot Podcast with your host, Glenn Schmeltzley. Let's get into today's show.
One of the best known events in the modern Olympics is the high jump. In this event, they would run towards the bar, then begin their vault by putting one leg over or trying to get head first over the bar. But someone came to the 1968 Mexico City Games who couldn't win on physicality or these approaches, but who did have a hack no one else had thought of. That person was a 21-year-old American named Dick Fosbury, who you wouldn't find anything notable about looking back at his track career. In high school, he'd struggled to master all the motions used in the high jump, and coaches noted how little he practiced. When time came for track meet qualifiers, his jumps came up short. But then he got to university for civil engineering. He began to experiment with other ways of jumping. In his studies, he learned that our ability to jump is limited by our center of gravity. Lifting our whole body over a bar at the same time demands that we raise our center of gravity to that same height. Fosbury analyzed to see if there was a way to get a human over the bar one part at a time, which temporarily moves our whole center of gravity to somewhere below us, even below the bar. That means that without jumping any higher, we can clear a higher bar. It's playing a trick on physics. Fosbury used the technique selectively for 2 seasons because his coach still went by the tried and true technique. The heights he was clearing got higher and higher. It wasn't until a month before Mexico City that he secured a spot on Team USA. The Olympics was the first moment where everyone saw Fosbury's new backflip maneuver. The press coined it the Fosbury flop. Everyone also noticed his performance. He didn't miss a jump right up to the medal round. I bet as international competitors watched him advance through rounds while they hit the bar and got disqualified, the bar was raised in the finals to 2.24 meters, 7 foot 4¼ inches, higher than at any games before. Fosbury missed on his first 2 attempts, but he was the only one to clear it on his 3rd attempt, winning the Olympic gold medal and breaking the Olympic record. Ever since, this back first technique has been the obvious way every jumper has used. Fosbury's style so clearly solved the high jump problem, we don't even question it. Lots of problems seem unsolvable until an obvious situation is posed. It's a phenomenon today's guest commonly sees on all sorts of websites. Her recently launched book puts it this way: the solutions we implemented may seem obvious in hindsight, but the problems and opportunities remained hidden until we analyze their data in depth. And that's the point. Our guest has spent 25 years teaching digital marketing strategy and analytics at business schools and consulting to companies whose websites generate hundreds of millions of dollars. She's the author of 42 Rules for a Website That Wins. And she came out in 2025 with the book Website Wealth, a business leader's guide to driving real value from your analytics. Let's go to Northern California to speak with Philippa Gamse. Philippa Gamse, welcome to Funnel Reboot.
Hey, good morning, Glenn. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. And I'm excited to talk about a book that you've written. What's the name of the book?
It's called Website Wealth, a business leader's guide to driving real value from your analytics.
Yes, and that's exactly what we're going to get into today. We're going to start by getting a myth out of the way. It has to do with people like yourself who study this sort of thing. And the myth is that a person who can analyze can, just by looking at the front end of a website, have a sense of what needs done with it. You say that when people come and ask you this sort of thing, hoping to get some insights, you say, I can look at your website, but I doubt what I will tell you will be of any use to you.
Okay, since I've been doing this for quite a long time, there are certain clues. What I can do is look at a website and say, if I had your analytics, I would be looking at this. Here's a video. Are people watching it? Here's a really long page. Are people scrolling down it, or are they missing valuable content because they're not getting very far down the page? I could point out a whole load of questions like, I'd be worried about this and I'd want to know what's going on. But without that actual data, I have no better idea than you do.
And the reason why the site should exist is to give the user the ability to complete a task, a job, or fill in some information gaps in their mind. You make that point very clear in the book. Visitors are coming to the site with that intent. They want to get some information, book an appointment, or watch a video to learn. You have the hardest time understanding what those jobs are if you are the owner of the business or a marketer who built that website. What is the problem? Do we not have the ability to step outside of ourselves and see it like the customers do?
Well, there's one other very important thing that people are looking to your website for, which is, can they trust you? Do you come across as competent, and do they believe your claims? Are you who you say you are, and can you do what you say you do? And there are ways a website can get in the way of that trust. So I think, I don't want to say that marketers have no idea what they're doing when they build a website, but the issue I find a lot is that it's absolutely normal. I'm sure I have it with my own site. You get so close to your own stuff, you can't see the things that other people are never going to be able to figure out. So
Right.
that it's not that we don't know what we're doing, it's that we're just normal human beings. I think I say in the book examples where the business owner will say to me, but it's obvious you're supposed to click that. And you go, yes, but you can say that because you know it's there. I never saw that before. I think in the book I give an example of where my brother and I were actually looking at the same homepage simultaneously for the first time. It had quite a lot of stuff on it, and we both gravitated to completely different pieces of that homepage. And that can be a very common experience.
Yeah. And there's many times where we don't understand who the user is. We'll get to that in a minute, but you rail against people who have real businesses, and perhaps there's even a physical location, or there is a way that you could meet this person if you wanted to, for example, spend an hour of their time. And yet, what you say they do goes in the opposite direction of how you would build that trust. They use stock photos instead of an image of themselves, or they don't put a physical address or even a city where they're located. If you were running into that person any other way, those would be the first things you would ask for you to ascertain, is this person trustworthy?
I was just thinking when you were saying, if you watch a load of trashy detective stuff on TV or online, there's always the woman and this very charming guy comes into her life, but she notices that if she goes to his place, there's no pictures of his family or anything like that, right? Because he's pretending to be somebody that he isn't.
The point's taken that there are clues, and we have wiring in our brains, as you call it, that for the longest time have been set up to do nothing but look for those clues or the absence of them. So we ignore
today
it at our
when
peril.
Right. Unfortunately, at the moment, there is a lot of publicity about scams online, about phishing sites, and all sorts of other stuff. I mean, yeah, you absolutely want to come across as real.
The way, getting back to the notion that they want to do something, whether it is reach out to you because you've given them a means of contacting you or finding out about you. The good news is that you can tell if your website is doing those things successfully by what you're seeing in the data from the back end. So just take us through a little bit of what the easy things are that we can check for to see whether or not those intended actions are as obvious to the user as they are to us.
And we should be really clear about this. Intended actions might be clicking on a link, filling in a form, might be to subscribe to your newsletter, right? Watching a video. And we can look for example, did they start filling in the form and not complete it? Did they watch the video for 10 seconds and stop? They place a load of things in shopping carts and then not do anything more. Or do they even start a checkout process? Abandoned shopping cart rates are still incredibly high, which is quite interesting. We can see all those things, and sometimes the data will give us an indication of why. The classic one is where somewhere in your shopping cart process, you reveal the shipping charges and the taxes, and that's when people say no. What the data can't necessarily tell you is why. So it can tell us where the problems are. It can't necessarily really get into the mind of the visitor and say, why did you stop watching this video? What was it that annoyed you? I think I also say in the book, we have quantifiable data, which is the numbers. And then we have qualitative data, which is the whys. And I do have these stories about telling business owners that they need to talk to their customers or visitors and say, tell me what you did or didn't like about the site. Do some usability testing. Get somebody who's never seen your website before and give them something to do. Buy something, book something, sign up for something, or find a piece of information. Then sit behind them. I mean, don't give them any sort of influence about what they do, or let them record the session, see what they do and where they get stuck, and have them talk through it. That can be so helpful.
Yeah, and so session recordings, wonderful. Microsoft makes a tracking tool. If you drop the tracking code in, they have this product called Clarity, which will allow you to play back. This will horrify a person who has built the website sometimes when they can see someone looked for this on the site search tool, and then it took them to that page. And then you see their cursor going all around. It's like they're on some kind of treasure hunt, but to you, you're almost screaming at the recording going, it's at the bottom. Just go to the bottom.
One of the things I love about it is that it shows you the user's screen as they see it.
Yes.
Because, of course, there are so many different screen sizes. There's mobile, there's desktop, there's laptops, there's tablet, so that you can see how that plays into their experience.
Yeah. The next best thing, you can pop up a little survey. Did you find what you were looking for today? Or have your chatbot do that. And that's going to fill in that why question. If you are in a hybrid physical and web-based presence, business owners have to do what you suggested, which is just ask the customer, have you been on our website? Oh, you came into the store. Yes, I came in because I couldn't find what I was looking for on the website. Oh, tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
So we really need to do that. And I think we need to, as we talk about getting into that data behind the scenes, the stuff that will tell us what they are doing or not doing, there's a couple of things that I think you put people at ease on. First off, you say, you don't have to track 30 things. You tell a story of one marketer who did have to report on 30 different things to their boss every week. What do you say to that?
It was crazy. He was in charge of pay-per-click advertising for a rather large company that you will have heard of. The problem with measuring a bazillion things, there is no point in measuring anything unless you know what you're going to do with that information. Measuring for the sake of it and knock yourself out, but what's the point? If you're measuring 30 different things, what you want to do with measurement is to improve. So you want to say, here's a metric that we can work with. You need to focus on that metric. And if you're going to change something and test it, let's try putting the shipping charges up front or whatever it is, or let's try moving the call to action, adding a new one or changing the wording on it, right? You want to just test that, because if you've got 30 other moving parts at the same time, you don't know what actually changed the response rate. I used to have the honor of teaching with Avinash Kaushik, which was amazing. He's one of the most gracious, incredible gurus I've ever met. I got to teach with him at an amazing company called Market Motive that unfortunately isn't with us anymore. He had a thing called the digital measurement model, which had no more than 9 KPIs on it. Those KPIs were spread across the customer journey. Acquisition, which is how you get people to your website. Behavior, which is all the things they do on your website other than fulfill your actual desired outcomes, like the actual sale or whatever, but the content they consume, which pages they look at and how far they go. And he would have 2, 3 at the most KPIs in each of those sections that you're currently focusing on, because that's the stuff that you want to work on. The goal here is to say, okay, my website's chugging along, but this is the piece that I want to work on right now. Maybe in all of those 3 buckets. Of course, there's retention as well. We could add on retention and support. The point being that you're focused and you're prioritized on things that you can do where you want to make a difference, and understanding what those things are. And sometimes it's something quick that you can hopefully fix, like let's just fiddle with this call to action and see what the right wording or positioning is. And sometimes it might be a much bigger thing. Why aren't people buying enough things that they put in our shopping cart. That might take more work. Otherwise, you're doing what we call vanity metrics. Did we get more visitors this week than last week? Great. So
5 most visited pages on our site.
That can be helpful information. There's always a, and then, right, what are the 5 most visited pages? And what are the outcomes that we're getting from those pages? Don't stop at just the list of 5 pages. Jolly good.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you mentioned that. Why is that good? I think the same thing applies to the PPC specialist. It also applies to the agency. So if you tasked an agency with building your website or running advertising pointing to your website, let's look at some numbers and use them for performance. I think that extends there too. Too often, a particular agency just regurgitated a whole lot of numbers. This was up, that was down, this went sideways. And what that tends to do, I find, is it makes the, let's say, the chief marketer or the business owner just gloss over. They have too much data coming at them. But instead, if they could lean in and say, no, I want that data. Maybe I don't, by nature, consider myself a quant, a statistically driven person, but this is my money. This is my business. These are my customers. Now, can you tell me in a way that I can understand for the business, just tell me the data that means something for that.
Right. So Glenn, I just need to be really, you've kind of said that I'm railing against people in the book. There are no names in the book, so nobody should be worried. The book is intended as constructive. My goal is not to slam people. My concern is there are a lot of different skills in digital marketing. For example, I used to do SEO. I don't do SEO anymore because I have no idea how to properly cope with SEO these days. Plus, I'm not that interested in doing it in detail. There are tons of different skills. There's design, content creation, SEO, advertising, media. There's no reason to expect your web designer to understand analytics. I think that is a mistake that some business owners make. You know, they'll go black and blame the web designer because something isn't working. In my experience, every single website that I've been involved in, you have a plan and you think you know how it should work and you put it up and it goes live. Then you find out what really happens and what visitors really do, because it's rarely exactly the way you planned it. I have concerns about agencies because I do think that there are agencies who will say, we include analytics in our services. And many of them honestly don't. What they do is a vanity dashboard. Mm-hmm. That's not what I call useful analytics. You got more visitors this week than last week. Does that matter? If none of those visitors converted for you, then so what? What's the point of them? Did you pay for them? That's even worse. Right. What I'm trying to persuade the business owner to do is, if your agency says they do analytics, then make sure they really actually do actionable, intelligence-based analytics. If they don't, then say, thank you very much. Please carry on doing the stuff that you're good at, like my SEO and my paid ads, and let me get somebody else to do the serious analytics.
Right. So there's something inescapable for our marketer or business owner here. They are the subject matter about their business, and they ultimately bear responsibility for all of the different parties that they hire. You point out in the book that they should be looking for example, an analyst at an agency who asks questions. Well, tell me what actually the website does for your business, or what do you hope to see happen? So you can assemble these people. One of the things you also point out rightly is marketing is a mile wide with all of those specialties. It can be frustrating for a non-marketer or a person in marketing leadership when you have an expert who just does tags, another expert that just does design, one for UX, e-commerce, SEO, and PPC. You make a plea for this at the end of the book. You say, please try to get them all together in a room, especially at important junctures like when you're building or rebuilding a site. Why is that?
Obviously, all these things bleed into each other, right? SEO and content and ads, everything has a bearing on everything else. If you want to do serious analytics, there are some things that you can build into your website that actually get massively in the way of analytics. For example, you said I could talk a little techie here. For those who know what an iframe is, an iframe is invisible to the person who comes to the website, but it's code from a different site or a third-party vendor. For example, a booking engine or a calendar widget, right? In the middle of the page that the visitor can interact with. To the visitor, it looks seamless, which is wonderful, which is why the web designer loves it. The problem is that it's code from a completely different site or provider hosted separately. And your standard analytics doesn't get into it. It can't get into that code unless you customize and handle that situation, which can sometimes be complicated. In my last chapter, I had a horrible example last year that we ultimately had to give up on. I even asked one of my gurus to help, and even he couldn't make it work. This was a rant. I know I've said sometimes when you said I was railing, and I actually really maybe wasn't, but this is a rant in the book, which is about third-party. This particular vendor wouldn't help. They were not interested in my client wanting intelligent analytics. This was a booking engine. So it's important to see which visitors completed the transaction because they didn't come back to my client's website at the end of it. This third-party vendor, which was the main supplier in this particular industry, and they've been around forever and they're doing fine because they're the main supplier and they've got all the industry knowledge and everybody goes to them. I was concerned because they were collecting data. I could see using my diagnostic tools that they were running a version of Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager on their part of the code, which meant they were collecting data, which has all sorts of implications for my client in terms of privacy. This is a booking engine collecting credit card information and addresses. We don't know.
You made promises when they arrived at the first page
That's
of your
right.
website of what you would do, but now there are promises that you cannot keep.
And it's not even that they are separate. We don't know what data they're collecting or how they're storing it. I do have this thing that these third-party pieces of code can be amazingly helpful, but it really annoys me when you get a vendor that isn't interested in helping the business get more intelligent about its marketing and is giving us potential legal headaches.
Yeah. iFrame is merely one manifestation of that. Another would be a SaaS tool where they say, we're going to create a little subdomain, like www to your site or info. But what that means, if somebody hops off of your main domain onto that domain, they're coming to this hosted area. Despite how easy it sounds like you can get onboarded with this tool, getting those people together in the room, asking the person who is trying to put this data into your Google Analytics, will I be able to have a continuous click stream of my user's journey, or will they go into a black hole when they move off of my main domain? Right. You can't abdicate responsibility for these things. It may make the decisions that you do on technology or the recommended decisions that you get, you may decide differently based on the new knowledge that these other marketing subject matter experts tell you.
And there's also non-analytics reasons as well, like synergy. If you're creating a campaign for a new product or something that you want to focus on, and you're going to run an ad campaign for that, wouldn't you also want some content around that? Your paid ads, the keywords that attract people, for example, can inform your SEO strategy. Right.
You always put a two-sided coin on how we need to look for these ways. We don't want to miss revenue opportunities, but nor do we want to needlessly waste resources. I really like that because we can sometimes worry so much about not doing anything wrong. We have an error of commission, right? We don't do something right.
Right.
So many different ways that you give that in the book. And I think one of the really clear examples to me of how it came down was not seeing how my website is serving different segments. I think the story the most was just a very simple example for a jeweler. So a jeweler has a website, and a jeweler needs to recognize that they have at least two different personas that they're working on, especially if we think about something like an engagement ring. Tell us about that.
Oh, that's actually one of my favorite. It actually comes from a real life case study from a jewelry store that had an online store and did a study on this. I used to do a lot of teaching in business school, and you can really ham up the characters when you're teaching it. You've got a page about a diamond that could go into an engagement ring. You've got two very different characters looking at that diamond. One of them is a young woman who's very interested in getting engaged. She may or may not have a guy that she wants to get engaged to yet, but she's interested in diamonds and loves bling, right? You can say what will be important to her. Lots of pictures of very pretty diamond, lots of flashy stuff, and share buttons so she can share with her friends and show all the things that she's interested in. Maybe a wish list if she has got a guy, so she can make a note of the ones that she likes. But she's not actually going to be the buyer. I contrast that with a very data-driven guy called Dave. To get engaged, wants to buy a diamond, but is a very cautious buyer because he's very data-driven. He wants to see pictures of the diamond, but it's not the bling that's going to really motivate and get his interest. It's the provenance of the diamond. Where does it come from? How is it mined? All the specs of it. Maybe he wants a PDF that he can download with all that on. Sharon, the woman, isn't interested in that at all. He will obviously want to know the price. Where they may come together, they may both want a wish list because he's going to want to make notes. He's going to be doing a lot of research. He's not going to buy the first thing he sees. He will also maybe want the wish list so that he can note the ones that he's interested in. You see a very different motivation for looking at this page. The jewelry store is interested in both of them because even though the woman isn't going to buy anything, she is sharing with her friends. So she's putting the word out. She may bring other people to their site. And the guy is a potential buyer. At the end of the spiel, I always say to the class, now, do you think these two were made for each other?
Well, that's a very dodgy question.
Opposites attract, so you never know, right?
They could, but I think what is a fascinating question, if we were to sift through the data behind the scenes, is has the site been designed and the data tagged in a way that I might be able to associate some actions or subpages or different modes of getting that information. I offer, let's say, the 360-degree view, but I offer right beside it the specs on PDF.
Mm-hmm.
My question would be, could I tell from the data behind the scenes, along with a few things that Google might share with me, whether it is a predominantly male or a predominantly female person doing that, but can I actually get those two segments where I can measure how well my website is treating them both?
Right. You can see the different actions we've talked about adding to the wish list, using sharing buttons, using the 360-degree, etc. It may not be definitive, but it will show you if there's a clear pattern of behavior that's more dominant, then you might be able to extrapolate from that.
It's digital body language, is it not? They're telling us about themselves by what they are doing. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think is really fascinating about how you brought it to life in the book. You were explaining that we shouldn't just be randomly making changes to our website. If we're thinking of either getting rid of functionality on the site or adding functionality, we should first look at our data. We're presupposing that data has been set up to do just the kind of analysis we talked about. But if it is, what I really enjoyed was the way you put it across. It seemed liberating. It didn't seem like I would be in these existential crises saying, do I take away functionality or add it? You said that when the marketer possesses this kind of data, the great news is that the data will tell you what to do.
Right. One of the things I really like about analytics is when you get beyond the, okay, what's happening and what do we need to fix, into the, and what other possibilities can we tease out? For example, I have stories in the book about where we found opportunities for new products, services, or target markets based on insights from data. And one of my favorites is a client that made industrial wax.
Right.
They were doing really well in search. They had a lot of people coming to their website looking for beeswax, duck's wax, etc. These were consumers who wanted to buy small amounts of wax because they were making their own candles. My client was a big industrial manufacturer. Their website had pictures of their manufacturing plant and how clean and well organized it was, which people really liked. They knew they had a lot of consumers coming to the site. So they had a big statement that said, we don't sell onesies and twosies. But when we looked at the numbers and realized just how many of these people there were, which you can tell because they see this statement and go away, and you can see the sort of keyword searches bringing people in. At that point, we said, what about developing a small e-commerce store? If you're a consumer, click here. Go to a small side store where we sell consumer level amounts of the sort of wax you use to make candles. They went ahead and did it. Maybe it's a bit of a business risk, but it worked beautifully because they already knew they were going to get the traffic because they were doing so well in search. Those people's search intent is very clear. I want to buy beeswax. And these people have very high quality beeswax.
Right.
And so they created this e-commerce store, and it did really well because they put a couple of people on it to staff it. It wasn't complicated to run. It basically had already sold itself. All you have to do is package up and send it out. It made a very nice little sideline.
And the important thing there was they deliberately decided we will split apart the pallets and be willing to have a separate business that is just selling small lots at a time. But you also give examples in the book where not deliberately, but by accident, the type of visitors that we don't want to have are coming to our website. You talk about another B2B customer where the owner was given some yarn by a SEO firm saying, yes, we'll drive a lot of traffic to your website. And then they gave them those dashboards that showed, oh, your traffic has ballooned. A lot of people searching for terms are coming to your website. But it wasn't until you speak with the salesperson who said, I hate what has happened because it has brought a lot of people. We can never sell individual appliances. We're geared to sell to distributors. So this has actually made my life worse. I think the takeaway here is there's no such thing as one monolithic block of website visitors. There are visitors of all types. Know what type you want. Make sure that your executives through to marketing and sales are talking with each other so they agree on which types of visitors you want and then deliberately go after those, right?
I think the problem was the firm's business model was set up. The only way you could express interest in a product was to fill in a sales form or a lead form. There wasn't any indication that they wouldn't send one appliance. The sales guy was upset because his rep spent so much time on the phone finding out that somebody only wanted something for their kitchen. That was not something they did. That website needed a statement that said, look, we only sell wholesale. We don't sell to consumers. When they did that, they're still going to get the same traffic. They're going to waste that traffic, but they've made that decision that that's what they want to do.
Right. And I think you say there are ways that your website design can put a large note at the top of the page saying, we are an industrial distributor of these products. We do not sell to end consumers. Or like in the beeswax example, are you an individual consumer? Go over here. So it all leads back to the data. If you've designed it in a way that you can tell, oh, I'm getting a lot of traffic on this page. This page was explicitly designed for this kind of customer. Then you're starting down the path of actually using the data on your website to make informed decisions on your business.
Right.
That's where we want to go.
Yeah.
Are there any other things that we have not covered? There's much that I couldn't get to in our discussion here, but I did enjoy the fact that you've pointed out there are people who arrive on your website that they are definitely not supposed to be there. So we need to remove them. There are people who are definite yeses, and there's a whole bunch of people in the middle that could be maybe yes or maybe no. And that we need to work on making our sites to help them choose which way they should go.
Right. And that's where the authenticity and the trust comes in as well. My goal in writing this book was to make the point to business owners who don't want to be all technical. So we were joking about it doesn't have a lot of techie terms in it, except towards the end when I make some points. This entire book is written in English. There are no pie charts or graphs or dashboards in the entire thing. There's very little analytics jargon, because what I'm trying to help business owners understand why analytics is so important. If you don't look at the data, you really don't know what is going on. You're flying blind with your marketing. You don't know which parts of your marketing work. Maybe you're doing social media advertising and your platform is saying, we're driving clicks to your website. But if you don't look at what's happening when they get to the website, you don't know whether that money you're spending is worth spending. My goal is to say to a business owner, you don't have to do this yourself. You don't have to look at the charts and graphs if you don't want to, but you do know what you ought to know about your site, what you ought to know, how that can inform your business strategy, what's realistic to ask your analyst to do, and how to talk to your analyst and help your analyst to help you. My favorite question that I start the book out with is when a client said to me, they didn't say, Philippa, please give me 50 pages of analytics reports. They said, please tell me, what do I need to know to run my business better? That to me is the best question that a client can ever ask me. What do I need to know to run my business better? We've also been talking about ways not just to optimize the website, but to increase your ROI, increase your revenue, increase the success of your business. The book is helpful for marketers, but I'm also hoping that it will help analysts if you take the book and give it to your decision makers, your clients, the people you're trying to help. It's not too long, so hopefully they can read it quite quickly. There are stories and examples in it that will help them figure out why you, the marketer, and you, the analyst, are actually so important.
Yes, I know it will be of value if it is read by the business owners. And I still think for marketers who have lived that unpleasantness of banging their head against a wall in talking to an owner or in having an owner say to them, I don't understand your marketing gibberish and I don't want to know it. Reading it helps the marketer maybe remove a few of the terms, but get more to the heart of that question. How do I make my business better? Because guaranteed that will get their superiors' attention. And if they can just do a little bit more of that, then they can do all of the other orchestration behind the scenes with all of the different parties to make a website do that. But if they don't have the trust of the business owner, I think it's all for naught.
Right. Absolutely.
Philippa, thank you so much for writing the book. If people wanted to get their hands on it or to find out more about what you do, where can they go?
Obviously, Amazon and all good bookstores. My website is called websitesthatwin.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only person in the entire world as far with my name, which makes me very easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with you there. I offer complimentary discovery calls, so I'm happy to chat with anybody that would like to do that.
Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
Take the information that Philippa shared and learn more about your funnel so you can make it even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.